The Pet Rabbit. Mrs. Nunn is at the supermarket with her 3 children. She looks worried. Her husband has no work, and she only has a little money for food. A young man is working at the supermarket. His name is Jeff. Jeff is throwing old vegetables into a box. "What are you going to do with those vegetables?" Mrs. Nunn asks. "I'm going to throw them in the garbage," Jeff says. "Can I have them?" Mrs. Nunn asks. "We have a pet rabbit. I can give the vegetables to the rabbit." "Sure, you can have the vegetables," Jeff says. He gives Mrs. Nunn a big box of old vegetables. The Nunn family doesn't really have a pet rabbit. Mrs. Nunn wants the old vegetables to make soup for her family. Every week, Jeff gives Mrs. Nunn a box of vegetables for the rabbit. Sometimes Mrs. Nunn finds cans of soup under the vegetables. Sometimes she finds soap, juice, or baby food. When Mrs. Nunn goes to the supermarket one day, Jeff is not there. He doesn't work at the supermarket anymore. But it doesn't matter. Mrs. Nunn's husband is working again. She doesn't need the old vegetables. 10 years go by. Mrs. Nunn is shopping at the supermarket when she sees Jeff. He is standing in the store's office. He is the store manager now. "Mrs. Nunn," Jeff says, "I think of you and your family often." Then he asks quietly, "How is the rabbit?" "Thank you for asking," Mrs. Nunn says and smiles. "The rabbit left a long time ago. We are all doing fine."